Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go into presentation mode. Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Juan Lopez. I'm really excited to be here. So we're gonna talk about shaping the future with con Producto. I'm gonna share here what I had slated for today. Essentially, we're gonna talk about a couple of things. One is product management as a discipline, kind of like what's going on today from a product management standpoint. Um, and then we have appreciated a little bit of parallel tracks. First one is product management. Second one is our background. Uh, and then I'm hoping to have an open discussion in how we could leverage our background to be outstanding product managers. So with that, this is a little bit of like the organizations that have shaped my product management career for the past, I'm going to say, almost 20 years. Uh, Currently, I serve as director of product management at Blue Origin. But I've done product or learned things about product throughout my career in this organization. So each one has certainly taught me different things. Let's talk about tech products. What is a technology product? What is a product? Essentially, a product is a collection of capabilities that deliver value to a defined user or customer segment, and they're brought together through a holistic user experience. They continuously deliver value over its life cycle, rather than focusing on a defined start and end, which is more of a definition of a project, right? A product has a life cycle. It's not necessarily a start date, finish date. You have a product, you invest in it, and you're supposed to deliver value, or your intention is to deliver value throughout your life cycle. So product has essentially three very broad components. By the way, I reference Marty Kagan a lot. Hopefully, you all know Marty. If you don't, there's plenty of content and books that him and his organization put out there. So he's been one of I'm gonna say people that I've learned more from about product and product management. But yeah, essentially, a product has three main components: customer, business, and technology. And the way to think about this is each one of these components have risks to be managed or to be mitigated. From a customer perspective, when we're building a product, we need to mitigate a usability risk, which is, can users use it? If you think about it, I always come up with the example of Apple products. I've never opened an instruction manual for any Apple product. It's so intuitive and so easy to use that I just start using it, and I kind of like learn as I go. So it's a good example of usability. From a business perspective, it's all about reducing viability risk, which is, does it work for the business? We all work in different companies, these are different organizations that have goals and objectives, and we have to do things in a way that is in compliance with the legal framework of our business, the objectives of our company, whatever regulatory processes we got to be compliant with. So that's what viability it's all about. It's making sure that whatever we do from a product perspective, it's viable for the company, the business, or the entity that we're a part of. And then technology. Technology is all about reducing feasibility risk, which is, can we build it? This is where the technical talent, the engineers come into play to make sure that whatever we put out there to the world, for the world to use, we have a way to build it in a way that is not necessarily like accumulating more technical debt that we need to. So the combination of these three things brings the value component of the equation, which is product is all about reducing value risk, which is essentially making sure that we deliver value to the user base, to the customers, by minimizing or by mitigating the three risks that we have above. From a product manager perspective, the product manager is essentially, we're going to talk about this in a second, but product management is all about reducing viability risk and making sure that we bring value to the customer, reducing value risk. Product is a team sport. We have product, UX, and engineering, software engineering typically, depending on the product, you may have data science, you may have other technical functions part of the product team, but the core is what I call the triad: is product, UX, and engineering. A UX designer is essentially in charge or responsible for usability risks. Product is responsible for business and value, and then technology, it's all about our technical talent, our engineers. So what is a product manager? There's a lot of misconceptions in the industry about the definition of a product manager, but essentially it's a leader responsible for delivering a differentiated product to market that addresses a market need and brings home a viable business opportunity. Understanding all aspects of the business to make sure that it's alignment to the business goals and objectives, and we can track those. We can track progress using KPIs, OKR, ideally a quantitative metric. That's not always possible, but ideally that's best case. This one's really important. The product manager is a little responsible for ensuring that there's a business outcome met, not just product definition and shipping. There's another great book out there. It's called Build the Escape Trap by Melissa Perry, which is essentially bringing this point home, right? I mean, a product manager or a product team, for that matter, their main reason to exist is not necessarily to ship a product. It's to make sure that there's an outcome to be realized by shipping that product. This is the difference between outputs and outcomes. Outputs are definitely a lever to achieve a higher outcome, so to speak, or a business outcome. And then last thing here is leading by influence. So product manager, essentially, it's an individual contributor role. And the reason is that way is because it's such a difficult job that, you know, by managing a product, you're going to have plenty on your plate to deal with. So that's why when you see a company that is doing product management effectively, they define product managers as individual contributor roles. That said, it's a team sport. The product manager is essentially a key actor, key player to bring all these functions together to deliver value, to build great products and deliver value to our users. So what makes a good product manager? Among many other things, soft skills and whatnot, but essentially, if you remember what I said earlier, the product manager is responsible for primarily mitigating the business viability risk and then the value risk. So the product manager needs to have deep knowledge of customers and users. You really need to be able to understand what is the environment, what are the problems they're trying to solve, what does the day-to-day look like, what is it they're trying to accomplish. Data, both quantitative and qualitative. What are the key metrics of success of your product, and making sure that you're enabling the users to achieve whatever outcomes they're trying to achieve. The business, this is about the company or entity you happen to be a part of. You need to understand the broader context. What is the company trying to achieve? What are the regulatory things you got to be compliant with, right? From any legal, whatever and whatnot. But you need to understand the business as a whole. And then your industry, where's the industry going? What technologies are shaping or developing, delivering new value? Like right now, we talked a lot about AI, which just happens to be a tool in the toolkit, a very important one. But a product manager needs to be always up to date to what are the latest industry trends in technology, industry, like business and all of that. So by doing these things, you should be, as a product manager, successful to not only mitigating the value and the viability risk, but also making sure that you can bring the right context to your product team so you can really build solutions to customers and delight them. From a product specialization, so there's also a misconception out there that the product manager is a product manager. Most people tend to think that product manager is technical and non-technical. And the reality is, like, not all product management roles are the same. And not all the work that needs to happen under a typical product management function is the same, right? And the industry has evolved into what we tend to see at these 4 specialization areas. Um, Core product management, you essentially do feature work, you deliver new features. This is a product that has already achieved product market fit, and essentially what you're doing is adding enhancements or adding new features that will delight your users and customers. um, OKRs, objectives and key results, are typically a good indicator to rely on when you're doing feature work, because again, every feature that you release out there, you're trying to achieve a certain outcome, or you're trying to make sure that your users achieve a certain outcome. uh, Typically this is where most product managers early in their careers start doing work, and this is typically what it's the introduction to product management by most people. uh, Also, what I've seen in industry is like what you see here. It's the most uh, wherever you see the most confusion between a product owner and a product manager, it's usually in this line of work. And a product owner is essentially a role that the product manager serves within the Scrum team. Product manager is the job. Then you have growth work. Growth work, similar situation. You already have a product that has achieved product market fit, and the objective is essentially to growth, to make sure that you have the right, acquisition, monetization, and right retention, so you can grow your portfolio, grow your business. Very different work than just feature work. Then you have innovation product management. Some people call this 0 to 1 product management. It's all about PMF, product market fit expansion. What are the areas that you could naturally expand your portfolio and keep growing your business? Very, very, very different. When you see a startup trying to basically begin their journey, this is the type of product work that happens at that phase. A lot of product discovery, a lot of customer discovery, if you want to quote Steve Blank, happens in this phase. Typically, you don't have OKRs at this. It's really difficult to have a quantitative OKR in this phase, because you just literally trying to understand what your customer needs. So very different type of work. Non-structure whatsoever, very ambiguous, because again, you're just learning by doing every day, learning from your users, learning from your customers, testing hypotheses. So that's what innovation product management is all about. And then you have platform product management. This is what most people call technical product management, but in this case, it's essentially focusing on the scaling of a platform. Think of AWS. Most of the product management work that happens within AWS, I imagine, I don't work for Amazon, I haven't, but I imagine is technical product management work. And think in this particular space, you have your users are very technically savvy users. Typically, your users are software engineers, software developers. So you need to make sure that you have a technical background, so you can understand it. You can speak to that audience, so you can solve their problems. So anyway, hopefully this gives you an idea of the different specializations that have evolved into product management, so that you can position yourself into each one of these based on your experiences, your skill sets, but also if you want to go into another one, you understand kind of like what is it you need to do to go get your toes wet in each one of in another one of these, right? So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about Latin America, the continent that we all either come from or have roots in, or have a family in, whether you're first generation, second generation. I presume that most of us have some sort of like tie with a country in Latin America. Some facts. Latin America is a huge continent, over 650 million people, a little bit over 8% of the world's population. Our GDP is 5,000 billion, 5 trillion essentially. From a literacy perspective, ability to, I think the way they define this is like people over 15 that are able to read and write. It's 94%. The world average is 89%, so it's not quite up to par with, I'm going to say, industrialized first world nations like the U.S. It's better than the world average, but it's certainly not up to par with like the U.S. and Europe. Internet users. This is important because you're talking about product management, tech product management, right? About 530 million, right? I mean, significant user penetration if you compare that with other areas of the world, name saying like Africa or maybe some other countries in other regions. A lot of the internet penetration is through mobile devices, actually, which is quite interesting, right? I mean, we don't necessarily have all the infrastructure, but like I think mobile cell phones have made quite a impressive penetration in our continent. And then post-spoken languages, Spanish and Portuguese. This is probably not a surprise to any of us here, but yeah, it's almost like I'm not gonna say 50-50 split, maybe 45-45 split. But those are the most spoken languages in our continent, right? But despite the fact that we have a lot of similarities, our countries are actually more different than most people know about, right? So for fun here, if you want to have some popcorn, the word that you have, the word that you use in different countries, it's a completely different word depending on what country in Latin America you're in. Argentina is pochoclo, Bolivia is pipoca, palomitas in Chile, Colombia is palomitas as well. Mexico, palomitas, Peru, panchita, Venezuela is cotufa, right? It couldn't be a more different word. In fact, I remember my first job, my mouse pad, I had this like matrix where basically we're trying to translate different words in different countries in Latin America, despite the fact that we're all spoke Spanish, right? Even if you want to fly a kite, this is also a fun one. Like Argentina is barrilete, Chile's volantín, cometa in Colombia, chichigua, that's a fun word in Dominican Republic. Volantín also in Mexico, cometa in Peru, and Venezuela is papagayo. So yeah, I mean, the point here is that, yeah, we all speak Spanish, but even something as simple as a thing could have a different word in different countries in the region, and that is also true not only for words, but the point that I'm trying to make here is that from a business model perspective, what works in Colombia may not necessarily work in Peru or Argentina or Venezuela. So one size fits all really doesn't work in Latin America. The countries within the region could not be more different. So why is that important? Because I was thinking about this. So what's really common in Latin America, right? What's something that we all have in common that we could all leverage from a cultural perspective to be good product managers? As I was doing some research here, so one of the things that I remember when I was there, and I remember from traveling to different countries in Latin America. I'm originally from Venezuela myself. But if you look at, not necessarily study, but if you look at this visual, right? I mean, and you compare the GDPs, gross domestic products, and GDP per capita in the Americas, right? What you see is that for countries in the region, in Latin America, the GDP per capita is drastically lower than that of the US, Canada, or some other industrialized countries like countries in Europe and whatnot. Depending on what country you're in, Mexico and Brazil like lead the pack in Latin America. Then you have Colombia following closely. But in essence, what this does is, yeah, you have lower GDPs per capita across the region, lower purchasing party for the common average consumer. Typically, the average tech worker, I'm going to say, likely has a lower set of resources than you would have in a more industrialized economy, right? This is based on my experience. I mean, I'm happy to hear what you guys have to say here, but yeah, I think what that does, and depending on what country you are, is like you have to become resourceful. And when I talk to my friends from Peru, from Argentina, Mexico, we all have to come up with like all these hacks in our countries, right, to make something happen. You know, example of a hack is it's may not the best example, but if you travel to different countries in Latin America, you have to like pay in cash because you usually have a parallel market for a currency exchange that will give you a higher value for your dollar in different country, right? So if you use your credit card, you get the official rate. If you pay everything in cash, you get better bang for literally better bang for your buck, right? So those are the type of things that again, every country is different, but like what it's common is like we all come up with all these hacks, and that means being resourceful. So we have to work that way, right? So that's something that we all have in some way, shape, or form. So what is resourceful is having the ability to find quick and clever ways to overcome difficulties. So how can we apply this to product management, right? If we think about the 4 product specializations that we talked about, uh, I mean, what do you guys think? You know, being resourceful could apply more or less. I actually think that resourcefulness applies to any product management specialization. I think is something that comes very handy in the product management discipline. Uh, but yeah, depending on what company you are, what industry you're in, being resourceful is something that will come handy in your work, right? And that's, to me, that's been a hallmark in my career. You always trying to find a way. You always trying to meet the deadline, reduce your cost, increase revenue in some resourceful way, right? And I usually I've been one thing that has been common in my career. Again, happy to hear what you guys have to say. It's like always trying to find a way by being resourceful. So that's something that I believe uh, it's a trait that we probably all have in some way, shape, or form, and it's very applicable to product management. So with that, we have 5 minutes left. I don't know. I'd like to have a discussion maybe in the chat, or if some people have questions. Happy to hear questions or like hear what you guys have to say. Yeah, how do I get into tech? Yeah, I think I'll take that one. So I started in tech kind of like I think everybody that is in product management gets into product management through a non-linear path, kind of like by uh, chance, so to speak. So I started at my first role was at Clorox, the Clorox company, right? I mean, non-tech product management, consumer packaged goods company, basically in liquid cleaners. It's a Clorox, if you don't know, it's a spin-off of Procter and Gamble, early in the about 80 years ago. So if you think about what I was doing there, I was quite doing a lot of product management things. I have OKRs, controllable inputs, outcomes, and I really learned a lot of the things that I implement in product management today from that job. So that said, I came to the US for my MBA, and then after that, I started working at Boeing, and I realized that there's this area of Boeing that had this technology P&L, software P&Ls. And I was like, well, I like to manage a P&L. I want to get into it. So I got into product management because it's basically like I found these areas where they're trying to run a business of technology. And then that's when I learned about product management. And yeah, it's been, everything's, going well since. Thoughts about ethical AI and responsible tech as it relates to product dev and management. First of all, I think AI is a tool in our toolkit. You don't talk about SQL product management or HTML product management. I think AI it's the new tool in our toolkit. It's a quite important. I think this one will have much more impact than anything we've seen before. But if you think of me, if you ask me, I think we do need probably a clearer regulatory framework about what we can and cannot do with AI from an ethical perspective. I think I'm not an expert, but from what I know, I think this is still trying to figure that out. So yeah, hopefully we'll have better guardrails in the future. But I'm an AI proponent. I think it's here to stay, and we all need to understand how we can leverage that to be more effective at our jobs. Uh, Favorite PM tools I use now. Favorite to use in my experience. Yeah, I've used a couple of uh, things to do product discovery. I think one thing that has been a problem for me is as a product leader is try to like manage both discovery and delivery. And discovery, it's if you hear, I encourage you guys to look this up. Dual track agile. So some tools that effectively do both. It's really hard to find. So you know. From a tools perspective, we use Jira for the delivery work, but I'm actually exploring other tools for the discovery type side of things. Product board, product pad, Asana also been told is very good for product discovery. That's the one that I happen to be exploring at the moment. We also use Figma for prototypes, which is quite useful if you are a good Figma user. So you have or if you have a good a designer that is proficient in Figma, it really goes a long way to test prototypes with users. What would I recommend to someone who's looking into product management, doesn't have a real tech background? Product management, my take on this, these are more commercial like business roles. I think there's been a misconception that these are tech roles, primarily because there's like the product owner. And I think if we're thinking of these roles as purely tech roles, I think we're doing a disservice to the discipline, because I think tech is a component of it. Don't get me wrong; it's a big component of product management. You have to be proficient to be able to communicate to your developers and your designers, so to speak. But also, you have to understand business and context and have leadership skills. So I think there's multiple ways to get into product management. One is if you're an expert in an industry and you can bring that context to a product team. That's a way to do it. There's a lot of people that have been their developers, their engineers that move into product management because they want to get like a higher perspective on things. But yeah, happy to connect with you, Stephanie, if you need something more specific. Dark side of product management. I don't think you understand that question. Happy to connect with you on that. Resources to read: books inspired by Marty Kagan. Start there. Escaping the Building Trap, the Build Trap by Melissa Perry. Also a good one if you want to lead product teams. There's a book called Empowered, again from Marty Kagan and Company. Hope Gurion, it's another good product manager, leader, coach. She has podcasts out there, great content. But yeah, there's plenty of stuff out there. Happy to share those with you guys. And yeah, I think we're out of time. Yeah, appreciate everyone. Hopefully you found this insightful. Happy to connect with you offline if you have any further questions about product, or you want to talk about Latin America or different words in different countries. Happy to connect with you on any topic. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.